unexpected NHL teams that almost became champions. Back in 2017, the Ottawa Senators were not exactly the kind of team anyone expected to see making headlines in the NHL playoffs, as they had just barely squeezed into the postseason, and most people saw them as a pretty average team that would probably get knocked out early. The Senators finished the regular season with only 98 points, and while that was enough to get them into the playoffs, they were not really talked about as a threat, especially since their offense was not anything special and they had not been dominating during the year. But what happened next is honestly one of the wildest playoff runs you will ever hear about. You see, once the playoffs started, Ottawa completely flipped the script as they took down the Boston Bruins in the first round, and they did it in 6 games, which was already a shock because Boston was known for being tough in the postseason, and while most people thought their luck would run out, the Senators just kept going, and they faced the New York Rangers next, who had actually beaten them in the playoffs a few years before. But this time, Ottawa came out on top in another 6-game series. But the real drama was just getting started. The thing is, the Senators were not just winning games, they were doing it with a style that nobody really liked watching, but it totally worked as their coach Guy Boucher had them playing this super defensive system called the 1-3-1, and it frustrated teams so much that even the fans started chanting about it during games. Meanwhile, their captain Erik Karlsson was playing through 2 hairline fractures in his foot, and even though he was in pain, he was still putting up crazy numbers and playing almost half the game every night. But what happened when they faced the defending champions is what made this run legendary. As it turns out, in the Eastern Conference Final, Ottawa went up against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had just won the Stanley Cup the year before and were loaded with stars like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, so pretty much everyone thought the Senators were finally done. However, Ottawa just would not go away, and the series went all the way to a Game 7, which was already insane because nobody gave them a chance to even make it that far. But the way that Game 7 actually ended is something that Senators fans will never forget. What I mean is that Game 7 was tied after regulation, and then it went into overtime, and then double overtime, and Ottawa was literally just 1 shot away from going to the Stanley Cup Final, which would have been their first time since 2007. But then, out of nowhere, Chris Kunitz scored for Pittsburgh, and just like that, the Senators' dream run was